Good afternoon, everybody. I hope y'all are doing well. Um, my name is Revanth. I go by Rave. I'm a UX designer at Amazon, and I've been with Amazon for a little over 3 years now. Before that, I did my master's at Bentley in human computer interaction, the HFID program. And prior to that, I worked for a few years as a UX designer in a couple of companies, and my undergrad was in computer science. So, um, and with CIS, when I was at Bentley, I was a Python tutor with CIS. Um, yeah, and that's a quick little introduction about me. And today, let's talk about what a UX designer does. What what do we do? Like, I'm a UX designer. Like, what is it that we really do? And what's our job? So first, before we do that, I want to hear from y'all if you've heard of UX or product designers. A simple yes or no, and if yes, how much do you know about UX and product designers? It could just be, I just have heard of that profession, but I have no idea what you all do, versus I have a pretty good understanding of what you all do. So just to make sure, this will help me set the right level of granularity for today's talk. Can you please post in chat? Um, yes, no, and how much you know about UX designers. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of no's. That's great because I think my talk today, it I have tried to keep it super generics, even for people who are not familiar with the profession. Okay, rough idea, interested to learn more, a couple of people. All right, okay. So it seems like the majority of y'all, this is super new. Okay, that's great. So today, then, I want us to be super interactive. This shouldn't have to be as the professor was saying. It's not a one-way conversation. I want it to be bi-directional. So you can keep questions towards the end, but also feel free to interrupt me at any point in time if you have any questions, and I'll be glad to answer them. So I want this to be more of sort of like a conversation than a presentation. All right. So. Uh, Let me start with what is UX or product design. Simply put, UX stands for user experience. UX or product design is designing how users interact with digital products and what experiences they have, right? So think of it this way. If you were to imagine a user and a product, there's a boundary, that interface that kind of the users use to interact with the product. So UX is operating in that boundary. So we really help users use a product. We make a product more usable. So to give you some example, if you think about any digital product like Instagram or Google Maps or like a banking application that we all use. All of these are designed by someone thinking about what experience you would have with that product. So as a UX designer, that's what I do is I have a product and I think about how can I make this usable? How can I improve how users interact with my digital product? So UX and product design is sometimes used interchangeably, but how some people define it is that UX is includes a lot of research. It is more focused on interaction and usability, whereas product design is a bit more broader. It also focuses on strategy, connection to business, and connection to visual design. At Amazon, this is used interchangeably. The official role is called UX designer, but we operate as product designers. We work on all levels. But some companies call them product designers. So you can generally interchange UX and product design. Now, why does this profession matter, right? So it's because um, imagine I don't know if you all know about this, but the story of why the iPhone is so successful. So before iPhone, we did have BlackBerry phones. Um, I haven't used one, but this is a story I've heard, is using a BlackBerry phone was not very intuitive, right? So uh, they had like a keypad where you had to type and it was harder to use. But iPhones were so successful in part because of a new interaction model, which is where you can touch the screen itself to interact with the device. So this is how we as UX designers or UX designers as a profession helps improve the adoption of uh, digital experiences and digital products, and also essentially can change the world. I have some scenarios here. I have some stories to share in the presentation today, where we will see some examples as to how design has made a huge impact um, for honestly like the course of the world. All right. When it comes to UX and product design in the space of technology, there are two broad categories. One is enterprise design, and the other is consumer design. In consumer design, we um, design applications like Instagram, Spotify, or DoorDash, Instacart, etc., where the focus is to design an application used by an end consumer. So Amazon.com is also a consumer application because it is used by an end consumer. So the focus of the UX design discipline for these kind of applications is making sure the user interface is simple, users can engage with the product well, and it's delightful. Whereas enterprise design is for business to business applications, B2B applications. It could be for business software, admin dashboards, internal systems. I work on an internal system at Amazon as well. And here, the focus is to make sure that the interaction is efficient, is to improve the productivity of the users. It is to simplify a lot of the complex workflows that the users perform with this product and make it more intuitive. So the core job is still to create invisible, seamless experiences, but the focus areas slightly differ for enterprise design versus consumer application design. Um, at Amazon, we Amazon.com is majorly consumer-oriented design, but we also have AWS. If you all are familiar with what AWS is, AWS is a big enterprise B2B platform, and enterprise design is super relevant in AWS. I'm just looking at my notes. Yeah, I think I covered all the points for the slide. Um, so, okay, before I move on, I just want to do a quick pulse check. How are we doing? Any questions? Nothing yet. If this is super new for y'all, I think y'all might have a lot of questions, but yeah, feel free to ask them right now, or you can hold them to the end, towards the end. Okay, moving on. I just also wanted to share this quick quote. Design is not just how it looks or how it feels. Design is how it works. And this was said by Steve Jobs, a really smart person, if you all don't know who that is. Now let's talk about the design process. So I talked a little bit about what UX design um, as a discipline is, but how do we go about designing a product that is easy to use, that is seamless, that feels intuitive? Um, the process starts with research and goes through several phases. The process is usually messy. It's not a linear process. We jump between a lot of these phases back and forth, but our ultimate goal is to make sure we create an interaction experience that is easy to use, that meets the needs of the users, and also it's intuitive and aligns with how they use and work the tool. A well-designed interface should be invisible. Good UX design is invisible. You shouldn't have to even think about interacting with a product when you're interacting with it. So that's our goal as we go about this design process. So I'm going to talk about each phase in more detail, but at a high level, we start with research, where we understand our users, we understand our user needs better, and we understand the problems better. And then we go to the ideation phase where we find solutions for the problems that we identify in research. And then we prototype, create functional prototypes that kind of illustrate what the ideas are. Sorry, was there a question? Okay. Yeah, and then we go to the prototype phase where we create prototypes to kind of illustrate how what our ideas are, and we test those prototypes to validate if they meet the user needs, if they're usable, if they're easy. If they're not, we go back to ideation, maybe we go back to research to see if we are missing any problems, if something that we need to understand better. We go back to ideation and then go through the cycles again. And once we think our solution meets the customer needs, meets the user needs better, it's easy to use, it meets all of our quality criteria, we then deliver it. Uh, by deliver, I mean we hand over our prototypes, our design artifacts to engineers who build products based off of those design artifacts. All right, let's start with research, which is phase one. In research phase, our goal is to understand before we jump to a solution. We might start with a product with a problem space, like let's say I want to design a food delivery application like DoorDash, right? So at a high level, we might start with the product phase, but we really need to get into the weeds to understand what are the main problems for the users we're trying to solve. What are their needs? What are their challenges? What is their existing user journey? And what are they trying to achieve? What are their goals? So we conduct research to understand these things. There are a lot of methods to conduct research. It can be as simple as we just go and talk to them, right? So we say, hey, tell us about your experience with this. What are you trying to do? What are your problems? Or it could be formal studies that we conduct, where we recruit a lot of people, and then we use a variety of methods to get this data. So um, and our partners in crime here are product managers and UX researchers. A little bit of backstory, right? So I spoke about what UX design is, but a complementary discipline is UX research, which is user experience research. UX research is entirely focused on research, as the name suggests, right? So it's entirely focused on getting answers to questions we have about our users, is focused on learning better from our users. This is kind of similar to I forget the name of the term, but anthropology studies, I think. Yeah, this is it. A lot of the methods we use in research are used from these existing psychological research methods, and then so there's UX researcher as a profession. Um is also quite common in tech, but there are more designers than researchers. As designers, we also do UX research to an extent, but for larger products like Amazon.com, which has billions of users, there are dedicated research teams that conduct a lot of these studies to get answers to a lot of these questions. And then we have product managers. Product managers is another profession which is involved in building a product. A product ma- Simply put, a product manager is someone who decides what we build. To continue my past example, they are the ones who decide, okay, our team is going to build a food delivery application. So at a high level, they decide the functionality we want to offer to the users and customers. And then UX researchers and designers come into play and operate in that space to dig deeper and better understand the user journeys and the user problems at a low level. Um, okay, quick question. If you were imagine shopping on Amazon.com, I'm sure all of y'all have used it. Um, and if you were conducting research, what would you ask some of the customers using Amazon.com? Just like any question that you can think of. Can you post in chat, please? Your goal here is to kind of understand how users shop better, right? So that you solve the right problem and not just build something cool that you think is right. Um, okay, I think what I'm looking for is just to see if you all understand what we try to do in the research phase better. Or let me rephrase this. Um, if you go to Amazon.com and like if I were to ask a question, when you search for a product, how do you search for a product? Okay, I'm seeing some responses. That's great. What aspects of the shopping process were easy or difficult? That's a great question. Honestly, that's very similar to a question that we would ask in an actual interview. All right, I'm gonna move on in the interest of time. So next up, I have a video to play. This is a short story about how research um, helped make a product more usable. I'm gonna play the video.
You just got about 3 more responses in the chat window.
Oh, let me see. Are there any bugs or issues with the search process? How easy did you find the shopping to be? What category of product are you shopping for today? How easy was it to find these items? Yeah, I think these are great questions. So, are there any bugs or issues with the search process? This is interesting. So, technically, it is part of research, but this is a question that we would ask more in testing and in delivery phase, because we all this is kind of validating if what we have built meets the user needs. Is it simple? Is it uh, actually solving the customer problem? But the other questions are more research oriented, where we're really trying to understand the core problem. We have not built anything yet, but we're trying to just understand the core problem to figure out what to build. Um, so research is very important in this phase, because a lot of times it's tempting to jump into solutions, and especially at Amazon, there is a lot of emphasis on data and collecting data before we go into problem solving, to make sure we are solving for the right problems and we are solving for the right users. Okay, great. Thanks, Professor. All right, now I'm going to share. Yeah, let me see. I can try if I can play this video. And I'm just gonna
oral healthcare.
Okay. Do you all hear the audio or no? Okay, y'all heard the audio. I hope there was no lag. Let me play it again. And if there's a lag, let me know.
About 10 years ago, we got approached by one of the largest oral healthcare companies in America, a company you've probably heard of called Oral-B. And they said, look, we'd like a new kid's toothbrush because ours is starting to get commoditized. It looks like a lot of kids' toothbrushes out there, and you can't have that. We want to be special, right? So we say, okay, we'll do this. We want to go out in the field and do some field research. And they're kind of not sure about that. Like, it's not rocket science. We're talking about kids brushing their teeth. How hard could that be, right? They would really like us to stop fooling around and start designing, right? But we want to go through this process, this observation process, because we think almost always you can spot opportunities. And so we go out, and we're on like the first day of observations, and we make a small discovery. Small discovery we make is that every kid's toothbrush in the history of the world has had the same implicit assumption. It's a logical assumption. It just isn't exactly right, which is the assumption always was parents have big hands, kids have small hands. And so when you want to make the kids' version, make it like the parents' brush, only smaller and skinnier. Perfectly logical until you go out in the field, until you actually watch humans, little tiny humans, brushing their teeth. And what you notice right away, you get a 5-year-old boy brushing his teeth. He's not holding his toothbrush in his fingertips the way mom and dad do. He's fisting it. He's holding it like this because he doesn't have the dexterity. He doesn't have the fine motor controls that his parents have. And so he's got to hold it like this. In fact, the other thing he does is he holds the brush too far up very frequently. And so he's punching himself in the face as he's trying to brush his teeth. And we solved that problem too. But the main thing was, came back in the field and said, uh-oh, kids don't need little skinny toothbrushes. Kids need big fat toothbrushes, right? Let's make them big fat squishy toothbrushes. And you may have noticed now every toothbrush company in the world makes these, but our client reports that after we made that little tiny discovery out in the field, sitting in a bathroom watching a 5-year-old boy brush his teeth, they had the best-selling kids' toothbrush in the world for 18 months. So when you think about power, when you think about, credibility, if you could go out in the field and do that observation and come up with that finding, and your company, your organization was the best in its field for 18 months afterwards, would that be worth it? I think that would be worth it. And so that's this message about think like a traveler, be an anthropologist, use your powers of observation, have that part of your brain turned up as high as you can all along.
All right. Let me switch back to my slides. Okay, on to the next one. Yeah, I think that video was amazing because it really shows how much of a difference good field research can make, and also shows why research is so important before we build a product. And I think he also used the perfect term, which is observe, which is majorly what we do in field research. Is we go there and we observe, we read between the lines, because a lot of times what users say and what they do is different. So we do hear to what they say, but we also listen and kind of read between the lines and actually understand what their problems are and what their needs are. All right, now moving on to ideation and prototyping. So now we have understood what we want to solve, um, but now let's figure out how to solve it, right? So that's exactly what we do in ideation and prototyping. We come up with solutions to the problems that we've identified in research, right? So for digital products, this means a lot of times we define the interaction, we define the user interface. That can be in the form of wireframes, screenshots, screenshots that are stitched together, or sometimes we build small websites. And especially today in the world of AI, it's so much easier to build websites with vibe coding. Um, we are building more and more websites instead of just mock-ups and paper sketches and prototypes. Um, so we come up with ideas on how to solve them, and we create prototypes that kind of illustrate those ideas and show what those solutions actually look like. And when we do that, we also factor in how humans work, how humans think, and how they behave. So a lot of behavioral psychology is used in how we solve problems, for digital products, that is. And we also we also try to think outside the box. Like we think about solving things in a new way. We think about how to creatively, solve a problem that's not been done before. But that being said, we do have some constraints that we operate in, which are surfaced in research, or some other constraints based on, like, let's say, the design system we use and so on. So we operate within those constraints, but we still try to think outside the box and come up with a creative solution for the problem that we want to solve. Um, and then before I move on to the next phase, I also want to talk about another story here, which is that of the butterfly ballot. And this story illustrates how design can literally change the future of an entire country, if not the world. So let's go back to the year 2000, and ballots are used in the presidential elections. And this was the ballot that was used in Palm Beach County, Florida. So as you can see, the issue, as you can see, like if you want to vote to someone, you got to figure out what's the right hole to punch in so that your vote is applied properly, right? So, but what happened was the Democratic Party is listed second in the left column, but actually it's the third hole in the yellow strip. Um, so this confused a lot of people, and they punched the second hole in the yellow strip, and so Buchanan got a lot of votes instead of Al Gore. And there have been research studies that I've done on this, but it turned out that the voters were genuinely confused by the butterfly ballot, and that eventually cost Al Gore the presidency. Um, so this kind of shows us how important design is, especially in high impact situations like an election. All right, now moving on to the next phase, which is test and iterate. So we've come up with an idea for a problem, and now we want to see if that idea actually works, if our solution actually solves what you're trying to solve. And that's what we do in test and iterate. right? So we check if our solution solves the problem, and does it solve it well? Does it meet our quality criteria? Does it meet our quality bar? So we go back to our customers, go back to our users, and then we validate those designs. So during validation, it depends on how thoroughly we want to validate this. In the tech industry, usually this is pretty rapid. So we maybe just run some interviews, show a mock-up, I've give them a prototype and ask them to use it. And then we observe if they are using it as we intend them to use it, and if they're able to use it. But it can also be sophisticated studies, formal studies that we run for several months to check if our solution meets their needs. It depends on the exact scenario, the needs of the problem space, and the impact of the problem space. But usually in the tech industry, we want to be more agile. So a lot of these cycles are uh, they happen pretty fast. For instance, in my team, because I work on an internal facing product, a lot of these iterations, like test and iterate, go back to the design, improve, come back and validate it. It happens in, let's say, a week or two time frame, because speed is super important in business. Yeah, and then we validate the designs, we figure out what works well, what doesn't work well, and we go back to either research or we go back to ideation and see how we can solve the problem better. Come up with more ideas, go back to testing, and test if it actually solves the user needs. So this is why, as you can see, the whole UX process is not linear and clean. It's often very messy, and that's okay because as UX designers, we are usually comfortable working working with ambiguity and working in an agile manner. And yeah, this is an example that shows the importance of user testing, right? So we think we design a simple, intuitive, product interface, but when we go to user testing, we actually see how customers use this, how users use our product, and that gives us insights on how to design that better. Okay, and then the last phase is delivery. So once we go through our iterative cycles of improving our solution, we then deliver the solution to our engineering partners so that they can turn our solution into reality. For digital interface, like for user interfaces, like websites and applications, we build something called high fidelity prototypes. What that means is in earlier phases, we don't really go into a lot of the nuanced details of how the experience should look like. But once we are happy with the solution, once we're happy with the core user experience, we then create high fidelity prototypes. That is, we go to the low level details, we get into the weeds, and we define each and every interaction that the user has. It can be as simple as, let's say they click a button, but something went wrong in the backend. What should that experience look like, right? So let's say that you're inputting a form, but then you accidentally click the cancel button. What should that experience look like? So we get into the weeds of each and every micro interaction the user has with our product and define what that experience should look like. So we create high fidelity prototypes that illustrate that experience to our engineering partners. And we also create specification docs where we specify, okay, for this micro interaction, this is how we want to solve it. Um, and I mentioned a little bit about design systems earlier, but design systems we also use design systems for UI products in a lot of these companies. So you can think of design systems like Lego blocks. It's reusable components and patterns like buttons and forms and colors and tables, etc. That act as Lego blocks that we kind of piece together to build out the user interface. This speeds up design, this speeds up development, keeps everything consistent, and we don't have to start from scratch every time. And good delivery requires close collaboration with our engineering partners, because a lot of times when we are ideating and building a solution, we do account for what's feasible, right? So if we have a problem to solve, we won't say, okay, if you want to order food using an app, we're not going to get it magically delivered to your home, right? So we still have to operate within the constraints of technology. So we consider that to an extent, but when the engineering team is actually building up those products is when we get to know better about what our technological constraints are. So it's not just like throw over the wall and we're done, and then the engineering team has to build what we design. It's more collaborative, where we say, hey, this is what we've built, and then they say, oh wait, that is too much, we can't build that. That's like that's not feasible technically, right? So and then we go back and tweak our solution and work with them to figure out what's the best solution that we can build with the given resources and the constraints. And the delivery phase also, the delivery phase doesn't end right after we hand it off to the engineers and they build the solution. Once the product is live, once we ship it out to the customers and they actually use it, we still need to measure and evolve, because we can't assume that our testing phase was effective enough. A lot of times in testing, there's a margin of error, right? So we think, okay, this solution works based on our testing with 10 users. But when we actually ship it to hundreds and thousands of users, we get more data about what actually works and what doesn't work. So once we do ship a product to customers, we continue to measure the experience. We continue to get data about what works and what doesn't work. We get quantitative data and qualitative data and continuously improve and evolve the product. So product development is never over. That's what people say, that development is never done, because there's always something to improve. There's always something to do, which is also another reason for this, is because users are never satisfied. So once you give them a product, at first they will like it, but then their expectations will go up as well. So we need to always play catch up to kind of meet those expectations. Okay, now let me give you a quick high-level overview of what a day in the life at Amazon looks like for me as a user experience designer. So up until now, what I spoke was more a generic UX process, but at Amazon, it's a bit more structured. We usually have product managers, designers, and engineers for a given product. So we call them the product triad, because these three folks together um, make a product reality. So the product manager usually is at the beginning of the process. They are the ones, as I mentioned earlier, they are the ones who define the functional requirements, define functionally what we want to build, what do we want to offer to the users and customers. So at Amazon, we have a formal process for it called the it's I think it's just called the product development process, but we have formal documents that the product managers write. They write something called a business requirement document, which in detail specifies the business problems that we want to solve. And then the designer and the researcher, if they exist, researchers are not usually available in all teams. But if they exist, the researcher and designer, in collaboration with the product manager, we work together to conduct UX research, to get low-level answers to user experience needs and user interaction needs of the users. Once we conduct research, and then the designers go into ideation. We create prototypes, we create low fidelity like sketches, user journey maps. We decide how to organize information, how to model a certain functionality, how to offer it, and then we validate it with customers. We, for me personally, because I work in an internal product, customer validation usually looks like setting up a meeting with some customers, with some users, and giving them the prototype and asking them to use it and give feedback. But sometimes it also looks like workshops, where we get into like a day-long workshop, and in the morning we understand customer needs. In the afternoon, we kind of come with solutions, and later we validate and get feedback. And as I mentioned earlier, this happens in cycles and iterative cycles. Once we feel that our core UX is mature enough, it solves needs, we then go to the delivery phase, where we create high fidelity prototypes, make sure it adheres to our constraints, uses the design systems, write detailed UX specification docs, and hand over to the developers for implementation. So typically, my day would involve, meetings with product managers or design critiques with my designer colleagues, or concept validation sessions or research activities. Um, so at a high level, the process still remains the same. It's just that we have a more formal structure and formal kind of documents that we use at Amazon to perform this UX process. Okay, now how is AI changing UX design? How AI is changing everything, but how is AI changing UX design as a profession? Um, so when I started at Amazon, we still didn't have LLMs, and the AI revolution was it was kind of pre-AI revolution. So I still remember the days when I had to create Figma mockups. Figma is a tool that we use to create prototypes and mockups. You can think of Figma as Photoshop, but on steroids. So we use it to basically create screenshots of how the actual product should look like. And we can sometimes stitch together screenshots to make a button click work. And when someone clicks on a button, we change to a different screenshot, so and stuff like that. So we would create Figma mockups to create low fidelity and high fidelity prototypes and use that for concept validation. But it's a tedious process and takes a lot of time. But with AI is helping us kind of um, offload a lot of these tedious, repetitive tasks. With AI, it's so much easier to build actual websites. We don't really have to build Figma prototypes to validate our concepts and or to illustrate our solutions. So it's also increasing speed because it sometimes acts as a creative partner. It helps us synthesize research data better. Research we can sometimes we have so much data, it just takes weeks to synthesize that better and get insights from research data, but AI is helping us do that better. But that being said, AI is still not a replacement for human empathy, for creativity, for taste and critical thinking. So AI only acts as a complementary uh, technology that we can use to just improve how we work, but the fundamental steps in the UX process have remained same, which is understanding the users, ideating solutions, validating our solutions, and delivering our solutions. These four phases have still remained the same even in the world of AI. But to give you some more details about what are some of the tools we use, um, as I mentioned earlier, we used to use Figma because not a lot of UX designers are proficient with programming or with building websites, but that has changed post the AI revolution. Today, creating websites is so easy with vibe coding. A lot of designers are shifting to just building actual websites to uh, to test out their ideas. So they're not still production grade websites where we can say, okay, our website is works well. Now we just push it to production. Engineers still need to step in and say, okay, this works to an extent, but they need to step in and make sure it's secure, it's scalable, and it meets our production quality. But it does help us speed up our UX process better. And some tools we have some internal tools, but if you all have heard of Cursor and Lovable, we have similar tools internally at Amazon that we use for our internal applications. Now, should you become a designer? So that is the whole point of this presentation, right? So this is to give you an idea of what UX designers do, and is that a potential career choice for you all? Um, So I think personally, you should consider this career if you like analytical and creative problem solving. So you need to have both a creative mind, but also an analytical mind because both are needed to do well as a UX designer. Um, but it is also quite fulfilling because you get to really solve customer problems. What you do does impact people's lives in some scenarios, right? So if, for instance, you're working on Amazon.com, whatever you design literally touches billions of people. So it can sometimes be super impactful, and the results are quite tangible. So when you design something, it's literally pushed to production. So you can see that it's helping out people in the real world. So it does help me feel satisfied and fulfilled in what I do. Um, and you also are needed to thrive in collaborative, cross-functional environments. Collaboration is paramount for UX designers because we have to really work closely with product managers and engineering to design experiences that are that not only work well but are also feasible and meets the business objectives. Um, I'm not saying collaboration and creativity is not needed for other roles, but it is especially more important and emphasized for UX designers. Um, and I think UX design as a profession is not a great fit if you prefer working more solitarily, like instead of having to always constantly collaborate with a lot of people. The reality is that there are a lot of software engineers and product managers, but very few designers. So we also do a lot of context switching, and we handle multiple projects at the same time. So there's definitely a lot of meetings and a lot of talking to people and collaboration. So that's something to keep in mind. And if and as I mentioned earlier, you also need to be comfortable to work with ambiguity because a lot of times we start with messy problem statements, right? So we need to figure out how to work better with ambiguity, and sometimes we don't have answers, and we should still be able to proceed forward, see what sticks, and get comfortable with uncertainty. And it's a good balance between technical and kind of artistic skill set. So if you like computer science and coding and programming, but you still want to do something that's a bit more artistic and creative, I think this is a great fit because that's personally the skill sets that I have too. My undergrad was in computer science and I really loved programming and coding, but at the same time when I got exposed to UX design as a profession, it it made me realize that this is what I want to do. Like this is exactly what I want to do because I get to use my CS knowledge, but also get to use my design knowledge and solve real problems. But that being said, I think UX design as a profession is going to get more important in the world of AI because today everyone can build products. Building is super easy. But what UX designers help us do is make sure we build the right thing, we solve the right problem. So I think UX design as a profession is going to be a differentiator for a lot of companies because UX designers help meet that need. That is to make sure we build for the right things in the right manner because building is super easy now, right? So, and this is just my hypothesis, but let's say 10 years down the line, if software engineering as a profession is completely taken over by AI, because AI is getting really, really good at coding, I think design as a profession is still going to exist in some shape and form, um, because critical thinking and creativity, although AI behaves as it is creative, it's not really creative, right? So critical thinking and creativity is still irreplaceable, and it cannot be taken over by AI. But finally, I think you should become a designer if you're really passionate about design. um, I think I gave you a high-level overview of what designers do, but at the end of the day, you should do what you're passionate about. A good way to check if you're really passionate about this is one is maybe taking an HCI or a UX-related course in school. But an even better way is by maybe getting an internship or like a side project that you want to work on, and then learn on the job. So learn as you try to build a product acting as a UX designer as you go through the UX process. Okay, and let me see. Okay, now with that, I'm at the end of my presentation. I have one last slide with a QR code, but yeah, let's talk. What did you all think? Do you all have any questions?
And if you're going to speak, please turn your camera on so we can actually see you.
Yeah, so that yeah, I can see you all instead of feeling like I'm talking to some imaginary person in my computer.
what would be like a typical salary for your job position?
Um, that's a good question. I think it would range. It depends on the level you're in. Uh, at Amazon, there are I think five, six, seven, four or five levels. So it starts from associate. So we call them L4, and then there's mid-level, there's expert, and then there's principal or staff. Um, there's also management. There are UX managers as well. So it really depends on the level you're in. But I would say at Amazon for L4 and L5, it ranges from, depending on the city, again, I think it would range from 120 to 180K a year. And the higher up you go, like a principal would probably make like about 350 to 400 a year. And that is at Amazon, and Amazon is definitely one of the higher paying tech companies. But generally in the industry, I think mid and entry level UX designers make about 100K a year, and ex senior level UX designers make about 200 to 250. But that's a great question, and thanks for asking it. Okay, I see someone else had their hand up or a camera turned on. Something in the chat. I wasn't able to scan the QR code. Yes, I'm going to show the QR.
We didn't show it yet.
Yeah. I'm going to show it again. But yeah, after we talk about questions and just a general chat. So after this, who is considering learning more about UX design?
Carter.
I guess I just had another question here. What would be like the most challenging part of the process for a UX and over the entire process?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. For me personally, I think research is challenging. It's because research involves a lot of, like, you need to do a lot to understand how customers work, right? So one example is recruitment. So it's hard, it's not easy to find the right people to talk to who are willing to give you time and feedback. So, and even when you have a lot of insights, synthesizing those insights into actionable, um, synthesizing those data into actionable insights is also challenging. So I think research is definitely challenging, but generally, I think as a UX designer for my role at Amazon, I think what's challenging for me is evangelizing UX. So they've hired me. They know that I do something, but a lot of people don't know what I do and what is it I bring to the table. Over the past 3 years, I've tried to educate my org to do that better. But Amazon as the company generally requires a lot of evangelizing. But there are some other companies that are much better in terms of UX maturity and design maturity. Um, Google, for instance, right? So I think Google definitely does better in terms of design. Um, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
We have time for one more question, and then we'll show the QR code and do attendance. And then after that, we'll stay on for a bit if anyone would like to chat privately or in a smaller group than what we have here. Okay, let's put up the attendance code.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for your time, and thank you for listening to what I had to say. I appreciate it, and thank you, Professor, for this opportunity. Before we leave, I also wanted to give you all some resources. So there are some great books that you can, read to get started in the field of UX design. But even if you are not intending on becoming a designer, I think you should still consider reading The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman. It's super foundational, and I think it's really insightful. Just in general, I think it's gonna it can probably also give you some life lessons. So I would highly encourage reading the second book in that list. But yeah, there are some websites that you can also refer to for articles and get email notifications for blog posts. And tools, I mentioned these tools already. There's Lovable, Cursor, which are the AI tools, and there's Figma as well. All of these tools might have student pricing, so make use of that.